welcome back to the final episode of Sonic X Shadow Generations. In this episode, we are going to defeat Black Doom. This is the end of him, and the end of Shadow's cursed past. I will admit that for a final level, visually, it strikes really well. But in terms of the difficulty, there's none of it, okay? Sonic Unleashed's Eggman Land, it has still remained to be topped in terms of difficulty, and I want them to make one that is brutally hard like that again. And even then, Eggman Land isn't even the hardest thing in games, it's just a really hard Sonic level. I guess the Master King challenge, but that's more of a boss rush than a level. The towers are pretty hard though. Not as hard as Eggman Land, but they were pretty tough. I think it has to do with the fact that I've just played Sonic for so long. Because if I hadn't, I don't think I'd be complaining about the difficulty as I do in these newer releases. Because I've seen the other streamers play this, and overall, they either don't have much of a reaction to it, or they think it's the most peak thing ever, even though whenever people say peak, I question why. This is a really well-made Sonic game. There's no denying that. However, for people to start saying this is one of the best ones, I don't know. I think people need to replay the 2000s era games. Okay? Or, hell, even the classics or the adventure games. I say adventure games even though one of them is in the 2000s. One of them was in 1998, so I'm going to count it. In terms of overall level design, I don't think they've hit Daytime Unleashed level design, or even the 06 level design. Because if there's one thing 06 did right, even to people who don't like the game, is level design. People may not like the control of the game, but the level design is top notch. And in Unleashed, I agree, the level design is also way better. I think what it is that there's no sense of flow in these levels. You can force a sense of flow, but you're not gonna end up in a true flow state because it's so often in these levels that you just lose control of the game. And this spectacle moment is fine. However, if as you can see here, you'll notice that there are brief pauses in my control. There are delays in movement. I'm not moving as fast as I would want to, and stuff like that. Surprisingly, looking at this footage again, I'm actually playing a lot better than I remember playing, because I remember that I didn't do too well in this level, but I guess it's just my own standards. There we go, I finally get hit. My own standards for Sonic games whenever it comes to quote-unquote getting good. I think I tend to overload myself in terms of my expectations for how good I should be at Sonic. Because the problem with Sonic, from the casual market perspective, is that Sonic is not actually good when you don't have any desire to improve. Because when you don't improve in Sonic, the Sonic games are actually quite frustrating. And that is one thing I've noticed Sonic fans say, is that, oh, you just have to get better at the game and it gets more fun. But the thing is, people who don't like the game initially don't want to get better. And this is a problem with games from the 80s and 90s. And since Sonic has somehow still kept its mentality, whereas Mario has not, considering Mario games I don't think modern Mario games don't ever demand that you get good until the end. Sonic has always demanded it from the start, is that if you want a great time in level 1, get good. Whereas in, say, Mario Odyssey, which is the most recent 3D Mario to my knowledge, unless something has come out in the time between the upload, you don't ever have to get good at Mario to play that game. I would argue you never have to get good at all to play that game. The game itself is, it's piss easy. There is a skill gap between the good players and the bad players with the hat jumps. But that's not the case with Sonic. With Sonic, if you're not good at these games, as you're seeing here, I'm not playing very well. I'm still getting the S, mind you. But if you're not doing very well, your playthrough of these levels will involve you getting lost, will involve you not knowing where to go, will have you, the player, find out that you don't really know what you're doing. And then I notice people who don't play the older stuff try to play this, and they don't know what they're doing at all. For my final thoughts on this game, and I think I've given my final thoughts throughout parts of the playthrough, but final thoughts on this point is that gameplay-wise, it's a solid experience. It's a good Sonic game. But I don't think this game reaches the levels of excitement that I had with Frontiers, that I had with Unleashed, that I had with Black Knight. Okay, mechanically this is a better game than Black Knight, without a doubt, but the fun aspect, because the thing is, when I was playing this, I was very mechanical. I didn't have too big of a reaction. Even in the stream, you notice that I was a lot more calm and subdued. Now, one could make the case that I still sounded more exciting during the stream of this game than I did during the stream of Frontiers. But during the Frontiers stream, I had already beaten the game when I started streaming it on Switch. And 2, I was very sick for most of the Frontiers era recordings and streams on this channel, which is why I sounded a bit more toned down. But at the end of the day, that's just how it goes. Where was I? Right. What I want to say now is this belief that I have. It's the fact that I believe all of the requirements to make a 10 out of 10 3D Sonic game now exist. We have the level design from this game. We have the control and combat from Frontiers. We know that they can design a good overworld thanks to the white space in this game, and because of Ares Island, Kronos Island, and the Update 3 for Frontiers. And if they get Kellen Quinn on the soundtrack, along with Tomoya Otani, and hopefully they bring back Johnny Gioeli, we could get the best soundtrack ever as well. As of right now, what I want them to do before attempting that is remake one of the 2000s games. If I could pick, I would either have them remake Heroes or Shadow, since those games controlled very similar to one another. However, given the Sega mandates, along with the consulting companies and the ESRB, I don't think they're willing to remake Shadow due to some preconceived notions of bad interpreters, which has changed the way that this series has been written. So, in that case, I'd want them to remake Sonic Heroes. However, I do not want them to redub it like they did for the Generations portions of Sonic Generations. I'd rather they just remaster the audio, because the voice acting in Heroes for everybody except Tails is better than everyone in the current voice cast. As much as I like to dog on the Adventure cast every so often, most of that is not really their fault. The fault with the Adventure cast's, let's just say, shortcomings were due to direction, given that the director of the Adventure games sometimes was unable to speak English. So they had them deliver their lines in English, but since they couldn't speak English, they tried to use a Japanese inflection, which is why oftentimes in Adventure 1 and 2, you'll notice that the characters have awkward pauses, or most infamously, the one where Sonic attacks the Egg Golem and he says, "Teria!" in the Japanese, but in the English version he goes, "Teria!" And in that case, if they do just get back the Adventure cast and then recast Tails, but keep all the dialogue the same, then we have it. But part of why I don't want them to redub games or remake games is because they're gonna screw up the writing. Even if the gameplay is better, if they screw up the writing, there is no point to remaking it outside of helping the casuals get in But the point is, we've gotten into these situations with games due to casualization. I should note that I have no issue with the casual demographic. People just play games to play games. But it's this push towards casualization in the industry that I believe has been harming the games for quite a while. I should note that this fight is far better than Time Eater, even 3DS, I would assume. But that's not really that good of a metric. I will say this is probably Sega's attempt to do the Sony thing where it's half a movie, half a game. But in this case, the game was so short, and I get it because it's not the Frontiers team. The Frontiers team better get this team aboard, and then combine both efforts, and if that happens, Frontiers 2 is gonna be excellent, okay? Frontiers 1 already pretty much restored my faith in this series, because after Lost World, my faith in this series was gone. And then I bought into the hype of Project Sonic 2017, Forces came out, and my hype was restored, albeit foolishly, once I actually got the game. I mean, I actually like Forces, but at the same time, mostly because I like designing my avatar, not even because I think the game itself is cool. And then we had this dog shit prior to that called Sonic Boom, which gameplay-wise completely shattered my belief, but I knew that was Big Red Button, so I wasn't too scared. Then I saw the TV show, the Sonic Boom TV show. I mean, I don't like it. I just don't think that the current game cast is as good as the 4Kids cast. I think the 4Kids cast is still my favorite casting for the characters. With exceptions, mind you, I think that the Sonic Heroes era Amy is better than the 4Kids Amy. But other than that, okay, I did like Scott Dreer's voice. Scott Dreer was pretty cool. But at the same time, I like Dan Green. Dan Green as Knuckles was really good. Also, I don't believe they got back Sean Schimmel for the English version of Black Doom. You're gonna have to check that for me, because to be honest, it doesn't really matter. Anybody could do the Black Doom voice if they just make their voice hoarse enough. So I'm not too concerned with his voice. I should note now that we're at the final area, it does feel like a final boss. Okay, I'll admit this is better than the freaking moon at the end of Frontiers. But then with Update 3, I'm gonna be honest, the Update 3 of Frontiers just had a more exciting ending. And maybe it's because I did play the Sonic Frontiers a lot, and I mean a lot. I figured out the quick step thing to get it under to lock onto the antenna and break it off really easily so that I could do damage to the end. But I imagine that those people who weren't like me, they didn't do the extreme difficulty for Update 3. I can imagine they must have had an extremely frustrating time, because extreme difficulty really does force you to learn all of the game's mechanics. You can't just coast along with a strategy that works on hard mode. It's not feasible. You have to learn the mechanics, learn the timing. You have to understand the enemy movements, the enemy patterns, the way that they respond to certain actions. And I think I really did like the combat in Frontiers a lot. Yeah, at the later at the later points in the game where you're just fighting the trials and you're just stomping over and over again. Okay, that's mostly for the supersonic stuff though, because when you're fighting normally, you can do some pretty sick combos. I'm not gonna lie, I think the combos are cool in Frontiers. Compared to this game, I think that I really wish they did keep, at least the overworld had the Frontiers combos, and we had more varied enemies besides gun mechs. I do know that this is supposed to take place during Generations era, so this is before Gun is destroyed by Eggman and Forces, because according to the Twitter takeover, Eggman defeated Gun during Forces, if I recall correctly. So this game has to take place before Forces. So it's possible that these characters haven't learned to do all of the crazy action combat that they could in Frontiers. So I believe that. However, Shadow's always been doing combat. In Shadow the Hedgehog, he had a sword, he had guns, and Sonic Unleashed, we had Sonic the Werehog doing the fisticuffs, so I think he could have done it earlier too. And then in the case of Shadow in 06, he had the combat style of gameplay. A lot of it did devolve into just mash A over and over again. But there were some neat little things you could do with the Chaos Spear, with the AX style, or the kicking. Again, if you're just going stage to stage, you don't really interact with it. But if you're doing some of the side quests, some of the missions in 06, you actually did have to use the combat to get those S ranks. Okay, those S ranks were kind of brutal, I'm not gonna lie. Or even in the boss rush as Shadow, you have to use all of your skills to get those S ranks. Now, maybe it's because I actually did buy all the DLC for 06 and I played through it religiously at this point. Maybe I'm just too used to other things. Mostly because at this point in my life, I don't think Spectacle really excites me anymore. I mean, when I first saw Giganto, I was pretty, excited to see the fight. But then, after that, like, Wyvern and Knight were cool bosses gameplay-wise, but I wasn't really wowed by the Spectacle. Maybe it's just me, but Spectacle is really hard to do right. It's very difficult for me to get excited by Spectacles in the game. Sort of like how in Spider-Man 2, where you have that side mission, where you had to go to the park, the amusement park, and ride the roller coaster and play some party games at the location. Just scenic stuff in games isn't enough. Now, if you have a beautiful environment and good gameplay, that's different. But see, all this Spectacle here, outside of this one QuickTime event, we don't do anything. We're not playing any of it. We're watching it. And this is a trend that I've noticed in a lot of more recent games, that they're trying to be movies. Now, don't get me wrong, when you have a really good story and you want to tell with the high budget, I get it, okay? It's cool to watch cutscene videos of some games. I remember as a kid, I would watch the 358 over 2 days CGI movie. I would watch pretty much all the Kingdom Hearts cutscenes. I used to watch them on YouTube. Halo 2 Anniversary was a great example of how you do a cutscene movie. But honestly, the Halo 2 Anniversary stuff really did just piss me off. Because then I watched the Halo TV show and I thought it was so bad. Here, at least, the Spectacle makes sense. But it's... I want to play this section, okay? Why don't we have access to these more dynamic attacks? At least during the Mavlis fight, we only really lost control at the end, but look at how much talking is going on. How little gameplay there is. Outside of pressing X, I believe, once after the cutscene begins, you don't really do much. I typed 2 V's, didn't I? Yep, I did. Okay. I'm gonna be honest, VSDC's spell checker is not functioning properly. Okay, that needs to get fixed. But other than that, it's what it is. So for my blind playthrough of this game, first playthrough, I'm actually quite proud at how well I did. I could have done better in a lot of areas for sure, but for what I managed to pull off, I think I did fine. So now we get a scene that I think would have been better if this game was longer. Again, most of my complaints with this is the fact that this campaign, if you're not doing all of the extra stuff during the main story, because you do the story first and you do the post game after, like other people, if you're not trying to go to 100% during the gameplay, that's different. This gameplay scenario is only 3.5 hours. Because my stream was hour 30, give or take. Then this was 2 hours? No, it must be less. I don't even think this made it to 2 hours. You can beat this $50 DLC effectively for really short time. Like, you can probably beat this in 2 hours on a first playthrough if you've seen video game footage of it. Okay, if you're like me and you went into this blind, no, I don't think you could. But if you watched people play it online, and you formulated some strategies in your head ahead of time of playing it, and you aren't jaded by the controls being different from the previous era entry, so Frontiers. And you learned about the speedrun tricks, like how if you use Chaos Spear in the air, it gets rid of your deceleration. Which I believe that should be a staple feature in all these games. There's no reason to have aerial deceleration anymore. It allows for more creative level design, I think. And overall, however, I think that this is a perfectly passable game. I don't think that the hype was all there. I don't know. I have no idea how to feel about this. Because it's not like Frontiers where I was excited the entire way through. It's more along the line. It's more akin to. Because the gameplay is solid. The gameplay is really good. But the way I'm reacting to these story events. I don't know. I don't know how to think about this game. Because on a gameplay level, it's fine, but it's also short as hell. On a story level, they needed more time because this scene doesn't have that much emotional weight. Because there isn't enough interaction with them in this game. I think that if we got to see more scenes of Gerald, Maria, and Shadow together, there would have been more emotional weight to it. But as is, there really isn't. Also, modders, please fix Rouge's outfit, and go back and fix Amy's bio, please. I gotta check if they did change Cream the Rabbit's bio and have her say that her first game is in Sonic CD. Because if they didn't change that, then we know hit detection's corrupt. If they did change it, then maybe it's the mandates. But overall, have a nice day.